A young woman married a millionaire, and he died the next day. What happened next? No one expected. Before clicking subscribe to learn more exciting stories like this and avoid 10 years of bad luck in love. The morning sun filtered through the blinds of Sarah Johnson's small apartment in New York City. At 28 years old, the young graphic designer led a quiet and orderly life. But that day, everything was about to change. With trembling hands, she held an elegantly decorated wedding invitation with golden motifs and English calligraphy. Her cousin Lucy, whom she hadn't seen in years, was getting married in Las Vegas to a wealthy local businessman. Sarah glanced at Michael, her boyfriend of the last 5 years, who was sleeping peacefully in bed. Their relationship had become monotonous and predictable, as if both had resigned themselves to a comfortable indifference. She sighed, thinking about how to break the news that she would be traveling alone to Las Vegas for the wedding. "Michael, wake up," Sarah said, gently shaking his shoulder. "We need to talk." Michael stirred between the sheets, opening his eyes lazily. "What's up, Sarah? It's Saturday. Let me sleep a little longer." "It's important," she insisted, showing him the invitation. "Lucy is getting married in Las Vegas in 2 weeks. I have to go." Michael sat up, rubbing his eyes. "Las Vegas? Is this a joke?" "You know I can't take vacation now. I'm in the middle of a crucial project." Sarah nodded, anticipating his reaction. "I know. That's why I've decided to go alone. It's my cousin, Michael. I can't miss her wedding." Michael's expression hardened. "Alone? To Las Vegas? I don't think it's a good idea, Sarah. It's a very different city with other customs. Besides, who's this guy she's marrying? Do you even know him?" "His name is Ryan," Sarah replied, feeling a pang of irritation at Michael's overprotective attitude. "He's a respectable businessman. Lucy met him during a business trip, and they fell in love. They've been together for 2 years. Michael snorted, getting out of bed. 2 years is nothing. What if he's dangerous? What if something happens to you there?" Sarah closed her eyes, counting to 10 mentally. "Michael, please. I'm an adult woman. I can take care of myself. Besides, I'll be with my family. I'm not going to a war zone. I'm going to one of the most modern cities in the world." "Whatever you want," said Michael, heading to the bathroom. "But don't say I didn't warn you." As Michael showered, Sarah began to pack, feeling a mix of excitement and anxiety. On one hand, the prospect of traveling to such an exciting place filled her with enthusiasm. On the other, Michael's reaction had left a bitter taste in her mouth. When had he become so controlling and negative? The following days passed in a whirlwind of preparations. Sarah immersed herself in work to get ahead on projects and be able to take time off without problems. Michael, for his part, maintained a distant and cold attitude, barely speaking to her beyond what was strictly necessary. The night before the trip, as Sarah was doing the final checks on her luggage, Michael appeared in the bedroom doorway. "Are you sure you want to do this?" he asked, in a tone that mixed concern and reproach. Sarah sighed, closing the suitcase. "We've already talked about this, Michael. I'm going. It's important to me." "And I'm not important," he replied, crossing his arms. "Don't you care about leaving me alone for 2 weeks?" "Of course I care about you," Sarah responded, feeling frustration growing inside her. "But I also have a life beyond our relationship. I have family, I have dreams. I can't stay stagnant just because you don't like the idea of me traveling alone." Michael stared at her, with an expression Sarah couldn't decipher. "Do whatever you want," he finally said, turning around and leaving the room. That night, Sarah could barely sleep. She tossed and turned in bed, thinking about the trip ahead and the rift that seemed to have opened in her relationship. Was she doing the right thing? Was she selfish for wanting this adventure? The next morning, Michael drove her to the airport in tense silence. When the time came to say goodbye, he hugged her tightly. "Be careful, okay?" he murmured in her ear. "And call me when you get there." Sarah nodded, feeling a lump in her throat. "I will. I love you, Michael." "I love you too," he replied, kissing her softly before watching her disappear through the boarding gate. As the plane took off, Sarah looked out the window, watching New York shrink until it disappeared among the clouds. A mix of emotions overwhelmed her: excitement for the unknown, guilt for leaving Michael, and a strange sense of freedom she hadn't experienced in years. Little did Sarah know that this trip would change her life forever. As the plane soared through the skies towards Las Vegas, fate was weaving the threads of a story that would test her heart, her convictions, and her capacity to love. In the dazzling city of the desert, among glass and gold skyscrapers, encounters awaited her that would shake the foundations of her existence and lead her to rediscover herself. The journey had begun, and with it, an adventure that would transform Sarah in ways she could never have imagined. The plane landed smoothly at McCarran International Airport, waking Sarah from a restless sleep. As she collected her luggage, the reality of being in a completely different city began to sink in. The airport's air conditioning contrasted drastically with the scorching heat that hit her as she exited to the taxi area. "Sarah, Sarah!" A familiar voice snapped her out of her daze. Her cousin Lucy, radiant and tanned, was running towards her with open arms. "Lucy!" exclaimed Sarah, hugging her cousin tightly. "It's so good to see you. You look gorgeous." Lucy smiled, her eyes shining with excitement. "And you look just the same as always, 'cause, come on, Ryan is waiting for us in the car." As they headed to the vehicle, Sarah couldn't help but marvel at the skyscrapers rising like glass and steel giants on the horizon. Las Vegas was a fascinating blend of modernity and tradition, an oasis of luxury in the middle of the desert. Ryan, Lucy's fiancé, turned out to be a charming and sophisticated man. Tall, with tanned skin and piercing eyes, he greeted Sarah with a warm smile and perfect English. "Welcome to Las Vegas, Sarah," he said as he started the luxurious SUV. "I hope your stay will be unforgettable." During the drive to Ryan's family mansion, Lucy couldn't stop talking, updating Sarah on all the wedding preparations and the events that would take place in the coming days. "Oh, and tonight there's a welcome dinner for the family," Lucy added enthusiastically. "You'll meet everyone, including Jake, Ryan's cousin. He's a charmer. I'm sure you two will get along well." Sarah nodded distractedly, her mind wandering to Michael and the tense goodbye at the New York airport. She shook her head, determined to enjoy this experience without remorse. The mansion of the Blackwell family was impressive, a modern palace with touches of traditional American architecture. Sarah was led to a guest suite larger than her entire apartment in New York. "Get some rest," Lucy advised. "Dinner is at 8. Oh, and wear something elegant. Ryan's family is very traditional." Alone in the room, Sarah collapsed on the king-size bed, exhausted but excited. She took out her phone and, after a moment of hesitation, sent a message to Michael. "Arrived safely. Everything is incredible here. I miss you." The response came almost immediately. "Glad to hear it. Take care." Cold, concise, typical of the Michael of recent days. At 8 o'clock sharp, Sarah went down to the main hall, dressed in an elegant black dress that highlighted her slender figure and olive skin. The murmur of conversations in English filled the room, mixing with the clink of champagne glasses. "Sarah!" Lucy's voice stood out among the crowd. "Come, I want to introduce you to someone." Sarah made her way through the guests, following her cousin, and then she saw him, tall, broad-shouldered, with an impeccable suit that contrasted with his casual smile. His eyes, an intense green, locked onto Sarah's, causing an involuntary shiver. "Sarah, this is Jake, Ryan's cousin," Lucy introduced. "Jake, my cousin Sarah, from New York." Jake took Sarah's hand, bringing it to his lips in a gallant gesture that took her by surprise. "Enchanted," he said with an accent that fascinatingly mixed Southern drawl with New England polish. "Lucy has told me a lot about you." "It's a pleasure," Sarah replied, feeling the blush rise to her cheeks. "I hope they were good things." Jake's smile widened. "Oh, the best, although I must say she fell short in describing your beauty." Lucy let out a giggle. "I'll leave you two to get acquainted. Be good." And with a wink, she disappeared into the crowd. The conversation flowed with an ease that surprised Sarah. Jake turned out to be a cultured and well-traveled man with a sense of humor that constantly made her laugh. He told her about his work as an architect, his passion for photography, and his travels around the world. "And you, Sarah," said Jake, his eyes shining with genuine interest. "Tell me about your life in New York. What do you do? Do you have a partner?" The mention of a partner brought Michael back to Sarah's mind. "I'm a graphic designer," she replied, evading the second question. "New York is a wonderful city, full of art and culture." Jake nodded, noticing her evasion but not pressing. "It must be fascinating. I'd love for you to show me your work someday. Maybe we could collaborate on a project." The idea of working with Jake sparked an excitement in Sarah that she hadn't felt in a long time. "That would be great," she replied with a smile. The evening passed with laughter and lively conversations. Sarah found herself looking for Jake with her eyes every time they separated, feeling a connection she couldn't explain. When it came time to retire, Jake accompanied her to the foot of the stairs. "It's been a real pleasure meeting you, Sarah," he said, taking her hand again. "I hope we can spend more time together during your stay." "Likewise," Sarah replied, feeling her heart race at the contact. That night, lying in bed, Sarah couldn't stop thinking about Jake. His smile, his voice, the way he looked at her. Everything about him intrigued and attracted her in a way she hadn't experienced in years. Guilt mixed with excitement when Michael's face appeared in her mind. She took her phone, wondering whether to call her boyfriend. Finally, she decided to send another message. "The dinner went well. I miss you." The response took a while to arrive, and when it did, it was just as curt as the previous one. "Glad to hear it. Rest well." Sarah let out a sigh of frustration. How could they have reached this point of coldness? Was it just the distance, or was there something more? Doubts assailed her, mixing with the image of Jake that seemed etched on her retina. As sleep overcame her, Sarah couldn't help but wonder what the next few days in Las Vegas would bring. What had begun as a simple trip for her cousin's wedding was turning into something much more complex and exciting. With Jake on the scene and her feelings in conflict, Sarah was unknowingly entering an emotional whirlwind that would test everything she thought she knew about love and about herself. The desert held secrets and promises, and Sarah was about to discover that the most dangerous oasis was not the one of sand and sun, but the one forming in her own heart. The days in Las Vegas passed like a whirlwind of emotions for Sarah. Between Lucy's wedding preparations and stolen moments with Jake, she barely had time to think about the life she had left behind in New York. One morning, while helping Lucy choose the centerpieces for the reception, her phone vibrated with a message from Michael. "I miss you. The apartment is very empty without you." Sarah felt a pang of guilt when she realized she had gone almost a whole day without thinking about him. "Everything okay?" asked Lucy, noticing the change in her cousin's expression. Sarah forced a smile. "Yes? It's just Michael. You know, missing me." Lucy looked at her with a mixture of understanding and concern. "Sarah, I know it's none of my business, but are you sure everything is okay between you two? You've barely talked about him since you arrived." The question hung in the air, interrupted by Jake's arrival, who entered the room with his characteristic dazzling smile. "Ladies, am I interrupting something?" he asked, his green eyes fixed on Sarah. "Not at all," Lucy replied with a knowing smile. "In fact, could you take Sarah for a ride? I need a break from all this tulle and flowers." Before Sarah could protest, she found herself following Jake to the mansion's garage. "I have a surprise for you," he said, winking at her. Minutes later, they were traveling down the desert highway in a luxurious convertible, the wind tousling Sarah's hair and carrying away her worries. Jake drove for almost an hour, moving away from the city and into the heart of the desert. Finally, they stopped next to an oasis, a mirror of crystalline water surrounded by palm trees that looked like a mirage in the middle of the golden sand. "It's beautiful," Sarah murmured, amazed by the view. Jake was watching her intently. "Not as beautiful as you," he said softly, approaching her. Sarah's heart was racing. She knew she should step away, that she had a life and a boyfriend waiting for her in New York, but something in Jake's gaze kept her motionless. "Jake, she began, but the words vanished when he took her hand. "I know we've only known each other for a short time, Sarah," Jake said, his voice laden with emotion. "But I feel there's something special between us, something I can't ignore." Sarah closed her eyes, fighting against the whirlwind of emotions that threatened to sweep her away. "I feel it too," she finally admitted, "but it's complicated. I have a life in New York, I have Michael." Jake nodded, not letting go of her hand. "I understand. I'm not asking for anything you're not willing to give. I just want you to know that whatever happens, these days with you have been the happiest of my life." They looked at each other in silence, the desert as the only witness to the tension growing between them. Slowly, almost as if it were inevitable, their faces drew closer. Sarah could feel Jake's breath, warm and tempting. At the last moment, she turned her face, and Jake's lips brushed her cheek. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I can't." Jake stepped back, respecting her decision, but the disappointment was evident in his eyes. "Don't apologize," he said with a sad smile. "I'm the one who should be sorry for putting you in this situation." The journey back to the mansion took place in a silence laden with unspoken words and repressed feelings. When they arrived, Sarah hurried to her room, needing space to think. She collapsed on the bed, her mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. She took her phone and looked at the photo of Michael she had as her background. His smiling face seemed to accuse her from the screen. With trembling fingers, she dialed his number. After several rings, Michael's voice sounded on the other end of the line. "Sarah, is everything okay?" he asked, surprised by the unexpected call. "Michael, Sarah stopped, not knowing how to continue. How could she explain what she was feeling? How could she tell him that, in just a few days, a stranger had awakened emotions in her that she thought were forgotten? "Sarah?" Michael's voice sounded worried now. "What's wrong?" Sarah took a deep breath. "Nothing," she finally lied. "I just wanted to hear your voice. I miss you." The conversation that followed was awkward and forced, full of uncomfortable silences and half-asked questions. When they finally hung up, Sarah felt more confused than ever. That night, during the family dinner, Sarah could barely look Jake in the eye. He, for his part, maintained a facade of normalcy, chatting animatedly with the other guests as if nothing had happened. Lucy, always perceptive, noticed the tension between them. After dinner, she cornered Sarah in a hallway. "What happened?" she asked bluntly. "And don't tell me nothing, because it's obvious something's going on between you and Jake." Sarah felt tears threatening to spill. "I don't know, Lucy. I'm so confused. I feel things for Jake that I shouldn't feel. But I have Michael in New York, and our life together, and—" Lucy hugged her tightly. "Oh, Sarah, the heart doesn't understand duties or geography. You have to be honest with yourself. What is it that you really want?" The question hung in the air, like a challenge Sarah didn't dare to face. What did she really want? The security and familiarity of her life with Michael in New York, or the excitement and passion that Jake made her feel? Meanwhile, on the mansion's terrace, Jake was watching the stars, thinking about Sarah and the moment they had shared in the desert. He knew he was playing with fire, that Sarah had a life and a commitment in New York, but he couldn't help how he felt about her. "Heart troubles, cousin?" Ryan's voice snapped him out of his thoughts. Jake smiled bitterly. "Am I that obvious?" Ryan leaned on the railing next to him. "Only to those who know you well. It's Sarah, isn't it?" Jake nodded silently. "Be careful, Jake," Ryan warned. "Sarah is in a relationship. I don't want to see anyone hurt in this." "I know," Jake replied, "but what if she's the one? What if we let the chance to be happy pass by out of fear of complicating things?" Ryan put a hand on his cousin's shoulder. "True love finds its way, Jake. If it's meant to be, it will be. But don't force things." That night, 3 hearts beat restlessly in the Blackwell mansion. Sarah, torn between duty and desire. Jake, fighting against his feelings and respect for Sarah's relationship. And in the distance, unknowingly, Michael, feeling that something had changed but unable to understand what. The desert kept its secrets, and the sands of time continued to fall, carrying everyone towards a destiny that none could foresee. Lucy's wedding was approaching, and with it, decisions that would change lives forever. His voice sounding unusually animated. "What do you think if I come to Las Vegas? I could arrive just in time for the wedding and we could spend a few days together." Sarah felt as if she had been thrown a bucket of cold water. "Come here." "But, Michael, I thought you were busy with your project." "I was, but I've managed to get ahead on a lot of work. Besides, I miss you. I can't wait another week to see you." While Michael continued talking about the trip details, Sarah looked across the room, where Jake was chatting animatedly with Lucy. As if feeling her gaze, Jake turned and gave her a smile that made her pulse quicken. "Sarah, are you still there?" Michael's voice brought her back to reality. Yes, I'm here," she replied, forcing an enthusiastic tone. It's a great surprise, Michael. I'll be glad to see you." After hanging up, Sarah excused herself and went out to the garden, needing fresh air to clear her thoughts. It wasn't long before Jake found her there. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice full of genuine concern. "You seem worried." Sarah hesitated for a moment before responding. "Michael is coming to Las Vegas. He'll arrive for the wedding." Jake remained silent for a moment, his face an indecipherable mask. "I see," he finally said. "I guess that changes things." "Jake, He raised a hand, gently interrupting her. "You don't have to explain anything, Sarah. I understand, really." But the sadness in his eyes said otherwise. Without another word, Jake turned and walked away, leaving Sarah with a lump in her throat and 1,000 unspoken words on her lips. The following days were torture for Sarah. On one hand, she struggled to appear excited about Michael's imminent arrival. On the other, she couldn't help but look for Jake in every room, feeling a pang of pain each time he avoided her gaze or excused himself to leave the room. The night before Michael's arrival, Sarah couldn't sleep. She went out to the terrace of her room, contemplating the lights of Las Vegas shining in the distance. Suddenly, she heard a noise coming from the garden. Looking down, she saw Jake sitting on a bench, his head in his hands. Without thinking twice, Sarah went down to the garden. Jake looked up as he heard her approach. And for a moment, both stood still, looking at each other in silence. "I couldn't sleep," Sarah finally said, sitting down next to him. "Me neither," Jake replied with a sad smile. The silence that followed was loaded with contained emotions and unspoken words. Finally, Jake spoke. "Sarah, I know I have no right to ask you anything. You have a life, a commitment, but these days with you have been the happiest of my life. And I can't help but think about what could be if—" "Jake, please," Sarah interrupted, her voice breaking. "Don't make it harder." I know," he said, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "But I have to say it, Sarah. I'm in love with you, and I think you feel something for me, too." Sarah closed her eyes, feeling tears threatening to spill. I don't know what I feel, Jake. Everything is so confusing. Michael has been part of my life for so long." Jake gently took her hand. "I'm only asking you for one thing, Sarah. Be honest with yourself. If after seeing Michael, being with him, you feel that it's him you want to be with, I'll accept it. I'll step aside and wish you all the happiness in the world, but if you feel there's something more between us, something worth exploring, don't ignore it out of fear or duty." Their gazes met, and for a moment, the world seemed to stop. Slowly, almost as if it were inevitable, their faces drew closer. This time, Sarah didn't turn away. Their lips met in a soft kiss, loaded with emotion and unspoken promises. When they separated, both were breathless. Sarah brought a hand to her lips, as if she couldn't believe what had just happened. I need time," she finally said, standing up. "I need to think." Jake nodded, respecting her space. "I understand. Just remember, Sarah, you deserve to be happy, truly happy." That night, Sarah barely slept, her mind a whirlwind of emotions and doubts. The kiss with Jake had awakened feelings she thought forgotten, but Michael's face, their history together, their life in New York, all weighed on her conscience. The next morning, with dark circles under her eyes but determined, Sarah prepared to receive Michael at the airport. As she waited in the arrivals area, her heart was beating fast. What would she feel when she saw him? Would all her doubts dissipate? Finally, Michael appeared among the crowd with a tired but happy smile. Upon seeing her, he quickened his pace and enveloped her in a strong hug. "I've missed you so much," he murmured in her ear. Sarah tensed for a moment before relaxing into the embrace. "Me too," she replied, and was surprised to realize it was true. Despite everything, she had missed Michael. As they left the airport, Michael talked animatedly about his flight and his plans for the next few days. Sarah listened half-heartedly, her mind divided between the man at her side and the one she had left at the mansion. Back at the Blackwell house, Sarah introduced Michael to the family. Everyone received him kindly, but she couldn't help but notice the look of pain in Jake's eyes when he saw them together. That night, during the wedding rehearsal dinner, Sarah found herself caught in a whirlwind of emotions. On one hand, the familiarity and affection she felt for Michael. On the other, the passion and excitement that Jake awakened in her. And in the middle of it all, the guilt and confusion that threatened to drown her. While Michael chatted animatedly with Ryan about business, Sarah excused herself to get some air on the terrace. She wasn't surprised when, minutes later, Jake joined her. "Are you okay?" he asked, maintaining a respectful distance. Sarah shook her head, unable to find the words. "I'm sorry," Jake said. "I know this is difficult for you. If you want me to keep my distance—" "No," Sarah interrupted, surprising herself. "I don't want you to stay away. It's just that I don't know what to do, Jake. I'm so confused." Jake took a step towards her, but stopped, respecting the invisible boundaries between them. "Sarah, only you can make this decision. But remember what I told you. You deserve to be happy. Truly happy." Before Sarah could respond, Michael's voice sounded from the terrace door. "Sarah, are you here?" Jake quickly moved away, disappearing into the shadows just as Michael came out onto the terrace. "Ah, here you are," said Michael, approaching her. "Everything okay? You've been a bit distant since I arrived." Sarah forced a smile. "I'm just tired." "Okay, it's been intense days with the wedding preparations." Michael hugged her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "I understand, but now I'm here. We can relax and enjoy together." As she watched the lights of Las Vegas, with Michael's arms around her and the memory of Jake's kiss still fresh on her lips, Sarah realized she was at a crossroads. The decisions she would make in the coming days would not only affect her future, but also that of the two men who now occupied her heart. Lucy's wedding was just a day away, and with it, Sarah knew she would have to face her feelings and make a decision that would change the course of her life forever. The day of Lucy's wedding dawned with a clear sky and a radiant sun, as if the universe itself wanted to celebrate the union. However, for Sarah, the morning brought with it an inner storm that threatened to overwhelm her. But her eyes betrayed her. It's been an intense week." Lucy turned, taking her cousin's hands in hers. "Sarah, I know something's going on. I've seen how you look at Jake and how he looks at you, and now that Michael is here, I can see you're suffering." The tears Sarah had been holding back began to flow. "I don't know what to do, Lucy. I love Michael. We've built a life together. But Jake, with him, I feel things I thought were forgotten. It's like he awakens a part of me that's been asleep for years." Lucy hugged her tightly. "Oh, Sarah, love is never simple. But remember, whatever your decision, it must be for you. Not out of duty, not out of fear. For what you truly desire in your heart." Sarah nodded, wiping away her tears. "Thank you, Lucy, and forgive me for bringing my problems on your special day." Lucy smiled, caressing her cousin's cheek. "Silly, you're my family. Your problems are my problems. Now let's fix that makeup and go celebrate love, okay?" Meanwhile, in another part of the mansion, Michael was preparing for the ceremony, adjusting his tie in front of the mirror. He couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Since his arrival, Sarah had been distant, as if an invisible barrier had been raised between them. A knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. To his surprise, it was Jake who entered the room. "Michael, I hope I'm not disturbing," said Jake, his voice tense but polite. "I just wanted to make sure you had everything you need for the ceremony." Michael nodded, studying the other man's face. There was something in the way Jake avoided his gaze that aroused his suspicions. "Thank you, Jake. Everything's perfect," Michael replied. Then, after a moment of hesitation, he added, "Actually, I'm glad you're here. I wanted to ask you something." Jake visibly tensed. "Sure, tell me." "It's about Sarah," Michael began, noticing how Jake stiffened at hearing the name. "She's been different since I arrived, and I can't help but notice that every time I enter a room you seem to leave it. Has something happened that I should know about?" The silence that followed was deafening. Jake seemed to be struggling internally, debating between truth and loyalty. Finally, Jake spoke, his voice laden with contained emotion. "Michael, I didn't want this to happen. Sarah is an extraordinary woman, and these days she's been here. We've connected in a way I didn't expect." Michael felt as if he had been punched in the stomach. "Are you saying that you and Sarah?" "Nothing has happened," Jake hurried to clarify. "At least, nothing physical. But I can't deny that there are feelings involved. On my part, at least." Michael collapsed into a chair, processing the information. "And Sarah, does she—" Jake shook his head. "You'll have to ask her that. I just thought you deserved to know the truth." With those words, Jake left the room, leaving Michael immersed in a sea of doubts and fears. The wedding ceremony was a spectacle of luxury and emotion. Lucy and Ryan radiated happiness as they exchanged vows under an arch of exotic flowers. However, for 3 people among the guests, the ceremony passed as if in a haze. Sarah, seated next to Michael, couldn't help but look for Jake. When their eyes met, she felt an electric current run through her body. Michael, for his part, observed these furtive glances with a mixture of pain and resignation. After the ceremony, during the reception, the tension reached its boiling point. While the guests danced and celebrated, Michael took Sarah by the arm and led her to a secluded corner of the garden. "We need to talk," he said, his voice serious. Sarah's heart raced. "Michael, No, let me speak first," he interrupted. "I talked to Jake this morning. He told me about the feelings that have arisen between you two." Sarah felt as if the world had stopped. "Michael, I can explain." "You don't need to explain anything," said Michael, his voice surprisingly calm. "Process all of this." "What are you saying?" Sarah asked, her voice barely a whisper. "I'm saying I'm setting you free, Sarah," Michael replied with a sad smile. "I'm going back to New York tomorrow. You stay here. Explore what you feel for Jake. If in the end you decide that what we have is what you really want, I'll be waiting. But if you discover that your heart is with him, I'll understand." Sarah hugged him tightly, sobbing on his shoulder. "You're a wonderful man, Michael. I don't deserve you." "You deserve to be happy, Sarah," he said, kissing her forehead. "That's all I've ever wanted for you." As Michael walked away, Sarah stood there, feeling as if a chapter of her life was closing and another was opening before her. Not far away, Jake observed the scene, his heart divided between hope and fear. That night, as the party continued, 3 hearts beat with uncertainty. Sarah, liberated but confused, faced a future full of possibilities and doubts. Michael, hurt but resigned, prepared for a journey back home that could be the end of an era. And Jake, hopeful but cautious, wondered if he would finally have the chance to explore a love that had been born unexpectedly. The Las Vegas desert, a silent witness to this drama, kept its secrets under a blanket of stars. And as the night progressed, fate wove new threads in the tapestry of their lives, setting the stage for decisions that would change everything forever. The morning after Lucy's wedding dawned with a deceptive calm. Sarah woke up early, her eyes swollen from crying, and her mind still processing the events of the previous night. She dressed mechanically and went down to the kitchen, where she found Michael preparing his luggage to leave. "Good morning," he said softly, looking up from his suitcase. "Good morning," Sarah replied, her voice barely a whisper. "Michael, He raised a hand, gently interrupting her. "You don't need to say anything, Sarah. What I said last night still stands. You need this time, and so do I." Sarah nodded, tears threatening to spill again. "I'm going to miss you." Michael approached and hugged her tightly. "And I'll miss you. But this is necessary. For both of us." As they separated, Jake entered the kitchen, stopping abruptly upon seeing the scene. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt," he said, turning to leave. "No, stay," said Michael, surprising both Jake and Sarah. "In fact, I'm glad you're here. I want to talk to both of you." Jake cautiously entered, keeping a respectful distance from Sarah. Michael looked at them both, his expression a mixture of resignation and determination. "Listen," he began, "what's happening between you two? It's no one's fault. Sometimes the heart has reasons that reason doesn't understand. Sarah," he said, turning to her, "we've shared wonderful years, and you'll always be an important part of my life. But if your happiness is with Jake, I won't stand in the way." Then, looking at Jake, he continued, "And you, Jake, I don't know you well, but I can see you're a good man. I only ask that you take care of her, that you value her as she deserves." Jake, visibly moved, nodded solemnly. "You have my word, Michael." Sarah, unable to contain her tears, hugged Michael once more. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." With a final handshake to Jake and a kiss on Sarah's forehead, Michael picked up his suitcase and headed for the door. Before leaving, he turned one last time. "Be happy," he said, and with those words, he closed the door behind him. The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah and Jake looked at each other, aware that they were on the brink of a new chapter in their lives. "What now?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling. Jake slowly approached, taking her hands in his. "Now, my dear Sarah, we have the opportunity to discover what this is between us. No rush, no pressure. Step by step." Sarah nodded, a small smile forming on her lips. "I like how that sounds." The following days were a whirlwind of emotions for Sarah. On one hand, she felt a freedom she hadn't experienced in years, the excitement of a new beginning. On the other, guilt and nostalgia for Michael still weighed on her heart. Jake, aware of Sarah's delicate emotional situation, showed patience and understanding. Instead of rushing things, he dedicated himself to truly getting to know her, sharing long walks on the beach, deep conversations under the desert stars, and moments of comfortable silence that said more than 1,000 words. One afternoon, as they strolled through the gardens of the Bellagio, Jake stopped in front of an arch of red roses. "Sarah," he said, his voice laden with emotion, "these days with you have been the happiest of my life. I know you're still healing, that you're still discovering what you want. But I want you to know that, whatever your decision, I'll be here, for whatever you need." Sarah looked at him, moved by the sincerity in his eyes. "Jake, I've been very happy these days too. It's as if with you I could really be myself, without fear, without pretenses." Slowly, as if drawn by an invisible force, their faces drew closer. This time, when their lips met, there was no guilt, no doubts, only the sweet certainty of two hearts meeting at the perfect moment. Meanwhile, in New York, Michael struggled with his own demons. Sarah's absence was like a constant void in his life. Every corner of the apartment they had shared reminded him of her. However, in the midst of his pain, he began to reflect on their relationship, on the moments when they had perhaps taken for granted the love they shared. One night, while reviewing old photographs, Michael made a decision. He took his phone and, after hesitating for a moment, dialed Sarah's number. In Las Vegas, Sarah was having dinner with Jake when her phone rang. Seeing Michael's name on the screen, she felt a mixture of anxiety and curiosity. "May I?" she asked Jake, who nodded understandingly. "Michael, hello," Sarah answered, moving away a bit from the table. "Hi, Sarah." Michael's voice sounded warm on the other end of the line. "I hope I'm not interrupting." "No, not at all. Is everything okay?" "Yes, everything is in process," he replied. "Sarah, I'm calling because I've been thinking a lot these days. About us. about our relationship. And I've realized something. Sarah held her breath, waiting. I've realized that, although I love you deeply, maybe we both needed this separation, this time to rediscover ourselves, Michael continued. And I want you to know that, whatever path you choose, I support you. If you decide your future is with Jake, I'll understand. And if you decide to come back, well, I'll be here, ready to build something new, something better. Tears were freely running down Sarah's cheeks. Oh, Michael, you don't know what it means to me to hear you say that. I just want your happiness, Sarah. It's always been that way. After hanging up, Sarah returned to the table where Jake was patiently waiting. Seeing her teary eyes, he gently took her hand. Everything okay? He asked softly. Sarah nodded, a smile mixing with her tears. Yes, everything is good. Jake, I think I'm ready. Ready for what? He asked, his heart racing. To give us a real chance, to see where this takes us, she replied, intertwining her fingers with his. Jake's smile lit up the whole room. Sarah, you make me the happiest man in the world. As they leaned in to seal that moment with a kiss, Sarah felt that, for the first time in a long time, all the pieces of her life were starting to fit together. The future was uncertain, but it was full of exciting possibilities. What neither of them knew was that fate still had some surprises in store for them. In the shadows of the Las Vegas night, a figure was watching from afar, their eyes fixed on the happy couple. A figure that would soon bring new challenges and unexpected twists to this love story that had barely begun. The following weeks were like a dream for Sarah and Jake. Las Vegas became the stage for their blossoming romance, each corner of the city holding a new memory, a new promise. Sarah, who had initially planned to stay only for Lucy's wedding, extended her stay indefinitely, captivated by the magic of her new life. However, as often happens, reality wasn't long in coming knocking at her door. One morning, while they were having breakfast on the terrace of the Blackwell mansion, Sarah received an email that abruptly brought her back to reality. It's from my boss in New York, she said, frowning as she read. They need me to come back for an important project. They say if I can't commit long-term, they'll have to look for a replacement. Jake looked at her, a shadow of concern crossing his face. What are you going to do? Sarah sighed, putting the phone on the table. I don't know. I love my job, but the idea of leaving all this, of leaving you. Jake took her hand, caressing it softly. Sarah, you know I'll support you in whatever decision you make, but maybe this is an opportunity. An opportunity? She asked, intrigued. Yes, Jake continued, his eyes shining with enthusiasm. I've been thinking, what if we opened our own design agency here in Las Vegas? With your talent and my contacts in the business world, we could create something really special. The idea fell on Sarah like a ray of light. It was risky, yes, but also exciting. The possibility of building something of her own, alongside the man she loved, in a city that had captivated her. Jake. It's crazy, she said, a smile forming on her lips. But I love it. They sealed the decision with a kiss, their hearts beating in unison with the excitement of a new chapter in their lives. The following days were a whirlwind of activity. Sarah submitted her resignation in New York, not without some nostalgia, and together with Jake, began to shape their shared dream. They rented a small but elegant space in the Las Vegas financial district and immersed themselves in preparations to launch their agency. One afternoon, while Sarah was working on the logo design for their new company, Jake entered the office with a worried expression. Sarah, honey, we need to talk, he said, sitting in front of her. The tone of his voice made Sarah immediately stop what she was doing. And what's wrong, Jake? You're scaring me. Jake took a deep breath before continuing. I received a call from my ex-wife. The revelation fell like a bomb on Sarah. Ex-wife? Jake, you never told me you had been married. I know, he said, running a hand through his hair in frustration. It's a part of my past that I've tried to leave behind. Our marriage was brief and tumultuous. We divorced 3 years ago, and I hadn't heard from her since then. Until now, Sarah tried to process the information, a mixture of shock and confusion clouding her thoughts. "And what does she want?" "She says she's in trouble," Jake replied, his voice laden with concern. "That she needs my help, that she's coming to Las Vegas." The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah felt as if the ground had opened up beneath her feet. Just when everything seemed perfect, when she had finally found her place in the world, Jake's past threatened to destabilize everything. "Sarah, please, say something," Jake pleaded, taking her hands in his. She looked at him, trying to find the right words. "Jake, I love you, but this is a lot to process. I need time to think." That night, while Jake slept restlessly, Sarah went out to the balcony of their room, her mind a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. Almost without realizing it, she found herself dialing a familiar number. "Michael," she said when her ex-boyfriend's sleepy voice answered on the other end of the line. "I'm sorry to call you at this hour, but I needed to talk to someone." Thousands of miles away, in New York, Michael sat up in his bed, instantly alert. "Sarah, are you okay? Has something happened?" And so, in the quiet of the Las Vegas night, Sarah found herself pouring her heart out to the man who had once been her anchor, her safe harbor. She told him about Jake's ex-wife, about her fears and insecurities, about the feeling that perhaps she had been too naive in diving headfirst into this new life. Michael listened patiently, offering words of comfort and wisdom. "Sarah," he finally said, "love always involves risks. But if Jake makes you happy, if you truly believe in what you have together, then it's worth fighting for. Face this together." Michael's words, full of maturity and genuine affection, deeply touched Sarah. "Thank you, Michael. You don't know how much it means to me that I can still count on you." "Always, Sarah. I'll always be here for you," he replied, with a mixture of affection and resignation in his voice. After hanging up, Sarah returned to bed, where Jake had woken up and was looking at her with eyes full of love and concern. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. Sarah cuddled up next to him, feeling the comforting warmth of his body. "I will be," she replied. "We're in this together, right?" Jake hugged her tightly. "Always, my love. Whatever happens, we'll face it together." As they fell asleep in each other's arms, neither of them could imagine the turbulence that fate had in store for them. At the Las Vegas airport, a plane had just landed, and among its passengers was a stunningly beautiful woman with a determined look. Olivia, Jake's ex-wife. With each step, she took on Las Vegas soil. Olivia brought with her not only her luggage, but also a turbulent past and secrets that threatened to shake the foundations of the life that Sarah and Jake had begun to build together. The stage was set for a new act in this drama of love, jealousy, and redemption. And as the Las Vegas night enveloped the city in its cloak of lights and shadows, fate wove its threads, preparing the ground for revelations that would change the course of their lives forever. The morning came too soon for Sarah and Jake. The Las Vegas sun, usually a symbol of new beginnings, now seemed to presage an impending storm. As they ate breakfast in silence, Jake's phone rang, breaking the tense calm. "It's her," Jake said, looking at the screen with a mixture of anxiety and resignation. "Olivia is at the Bellagio Hotel. She wants to see us. Both of us." Sarah felt her stomach tighten. "Both of us? Jake." "I don't know if I'm ready for this." Jake took her hand across the table. "I know, my love, but I think it's better to face this at once. Together, remember?" With a sigh, Sarah nodded. Together. The journey to the luxurious hotel was tense. Sarah couldn't help but imagine what Olivia would be like, what secrets from Jake's past she was about to discover. For his part, Jake kept his eyes fixed on the road, his mind clearly elsewhere. As they entered the opulent lobby of the Bellagio, Sarah saw her immediately. It was impossible not to. Olivia was the type of woman who captured all eyes when she entered a room. Tall, with ebony hair that fell in perfect waves over her shoulders, and dark eyes that seemed to contain 1,000 secrets. "Jake," Olivia said, her voice a seductive purr as she approached. Completely ignoring Sarah, She leaned in to kiss both of Jake's cheeks, lingering a little longer than necessary. Jake visibly tensed, taking a step back. "Olivia," he responded coldly, "let me introduce you to Sarah, my partner." Olivia's eyes finally fell on Sarah, evaluating her from head to toe with a look that mixed disdain and curiosity. "Charmed," she said, although her tone suggested quite the opposite. "Likewise," Sarah replied, raising her chin in a gesture of defiance. They sat in one of the hotel's luxurious private lounges, the tension palpable in the air. "Well, Olivia," Jake began, his voice tense, "what is so urgent that you need from me?" Olivia took a sip of her tea, taking her time before answering. "Oh, Jake, always so direct. Can't I simply want to see my ex-husband?" "You know it's not like that," Jake replied. "Not after how things ended between us." Sarah observed the exchange, feeling that there was a whole untold story floating in the air. Finally, Olivia sighed dramatically. "All right, I'll get to the point. I'm in trouble, Jake. Financial and legal troubles." Jake tensed even more, if that was possible. "What have you done this time, Olivia? Let's say that some of my investments haven't gone as expected, and I may have taken some shortcuts to try to recover my money." "My God, Olivia," Jake groaned, running a hand over his face in frustration. "Again with your schemes." Sarah intervened for the first time. "Excuse me, but can someone explain to me what's going on here?" Olivia looked at her with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh dear. Hasn't Jake told you about our past? How inconsiderate of him." "Olivia, enough," Jake warned. But Olivia continued, her eyes shining with malice. "You see, Sarah, Jake and I weren't just husband and wife. We were partners in every sense. Business, pleasures, even in some ventures that bordered on the illegal." Sarah felt as if she had been punched in the stomach. She looked at Jake, searching his eyes for some sign that it was all a lie. But what she saw was guilt and shame. "Jake, is it true?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Jake closed his eyes for a moment, as if gathering strength. "Yes, Sarah. There's a part of my past that I'm not proud of. Olivia and we got involved in shady businesses. It was a dark time in my life, one that I've tried to redeem myself from ever since." Olivia let out a giggle. "Oh, come on, Jake, it wasn't that bad. We lived like kings, remember?" "Enough!" Jake exclaimed, slamming his palm on the table. "That's in the past, Olivia. I've changed. My life is different now." Sarah stood up abruptly. "I need some air," she said, and quickly left the lounge, leaving Jake and Olivia alone. On the hotel terrace, overlooking the Las Vegas Strip, Sarah tried to process everything she had just discovered. She felt that the Jake she knew, the man she had fallen in love with, was vanishing before her eyes, replaced by a stranger with a dark past. She was so absorbed in her thoughts that she didn't notice someone else's presence until a familiar voice startled her. "Sarah, is that you?" She turned, surprised, to find herself face to face with Michael. "Michael, what are you doing here?" she asked, astonished. Michael seemed equally surprised. "I'm here on business. My company is considering opening a branch in Las Vegas, and I came to explore the terrain. But are you okay? You seem upset." Perhaps it was the familiarity of his presence, or maybe the accumulation of emotions. But Sarah found herself crumbling in Michael's arms, tears freely running down her cheeks. "Oh, Michael," she sobbed, "everything's a mess. Jake, his ex-wife, there are so many things I didn't know." Michael hugged her tightly, caressing her back in a comforting gesture. "Shh, it's okay. I'm here. Tell me what happened." And so, on the terrace of the most luxurious hotel in Las Vegas, Sarah found herself pouring her heart out to the man who had once been her life partner. She told him everything, about Olivia, about Jake's turbulent past, about her own doubts and fears. Michael listened attentively, without judging, offering the comfort and understanding that Sarah so desperately needed at that moment. "Sarah," he finally said, taking her hands in his, "I know you're confused and hurt, but remember, we all have a past. What's important is who Jake is now and how he treats you." Sarah looked at him, surprised by his maturity and understanding. "Michael, thank you. You don't know how much it means to me that you're here, that you listen to me like this." For a moment, time seemed to stand still. Sarah found herself lost in Michael's eyes, remembering the history they had shared, the comfort and security she had always found in his arms. Without thinking, she leaned towards him. "Sarah!" Jake's voice broke the spell. Sarah abruptly pulled away from Michael, turning to see Jake standing at the entrance to the terrace, his face a mixture of surprise, pain, and jealousy. "Jake, Sarah began, but the words died in her throat. Jake looked from Sarah to Michael, his eyes narrowing. "I see I'm interrupting something," he said, his voice cold as ice. "How convenient that your ex-boyfriend is here just when things get difficult, huh?" "It's not what it looks like," Michael intervened, stepping forward. "Oh, I'm sure it's not," Jake replied sarcastically. Then, addressing Sarah, he added, "When you're ready to talk, I'll be in our room, if you still want to come back." With those words, Jake turned and left, leaving Sarah and Michael in an awkward silence. Sarah turned to Michael, her eyes full of confusion and guilt. "Michael, He raised a hand, gently interrupting her. "You don't have to explain anything, Sarah. Go to him. Talk. Solve this." Sarah nodded, grateful. Before leaving, she turned one last time. "Michael, thank you for everything." As Sarah walked away, Michael watched her with a mixture of love and resignation. Deep down, he knew that his moment had passed, that now his role in Sarah's life was that of a friend, a support. And although it hurt, he was willing to accept it, if it meant Sarah's happiness. In the hotel suite, Jake was waiting, his mind a whirlwind of emotions. The reunion with Olivia had stirred up old ghosts he thought were buried, and seeing Sarah in Michael's arms had awakened insecurities he didn't know he had. When Sarah entered the room, the air was charged with tension. They looked at each other in silence for what seemed like an eternity. Finally, Sarah spoke. "Jake, we need to talk. About everything. About your past. About Olivia. About us. No more secrets. No more half-truths. If we're going to get through this, I need you to be completely honest with me." Jake nodded slowly. "You're right, I owe you that. We owe it to ourselves." And so, as the sun set over Las Vegas, bathing the city in golden and reddish tones, Sarah and Jake sat down to talk, to bare their souls and face their fears. The night would be long, full of revelations and difficult decisions, but somewhere, deep in their hearts, they both knew that this was just another obstacle in their path. An obstacle that, if they managed to overcome it together, would only strengthen the love they shared. The question was, would they be able to overcome the sandstorms that fate had put in their path? Night fell over Las Vegas, enveloping the city in a cloak of bright lights and mysterious shadows. In the hotel suite, Sarah and Jake faced the most difficult conversation of their relationship. "Let's start from the beginning," Sarah said, her voice firm despite the whirlwind of emotions inside her. "Tell me everything about your past with Olivia." Jake took a deep breath before beginning. "I met Olivia 6 years ago. I was young, ambitious, and honestly, quite naive. She was dazzling, charismatic, and seemed to have the world at her feet. I fell head over heels in love." Sarah listened attentively, noticing the pain in Jake's voice as he relived his past. "At first, everything was perfect. We got married after a whirlwind romance and started doing business together. Olivia had contacts everywhere, and soon we found ourselves moving in circles of very powerful and wealthy people." Jake paused, closing his eyes for a moment before continuing. "But over time, I realized that many of our businesses were not entirely legal. Money laundering, bribes, even some scams. I tried to convince myself that it wasn't that serious, that everyone did it in that world. But every day I felt more uncomfortable, more distant from who I really was." Sarah took his hand, silently encouraging him to continue. "One day, I discovered that Olivia had been cheating on me. Not only with other men, but also in business. She was about to involve me in a scheme that could have sent me to jail. It was my wake-up call. I realized that I had lost my way, that I had become someone I didn't recognize. "What did you do then?" Sarah asked softly. "On I left. I left everything behind. I spent months legally disentangling myself from all the shady businesses, cooperating with the authorities to clear my name. It was the most difficult time of my life, but also the most transformative. I swore that I would never again stray from my values, that I would build a life and career based on honesty and integrity." Sarah processed all this information, her mind working at full speed. "And now, what does Olivia really want?" Jake sighed. "Money, of course. She's in trouble and thinks she can manipulate me into helping her, but I won't do it, Sarah. That part of my life is behind me." They looked at each other in silence for a moment, the tension palpable in the air. "Jake," Sarah finally said, "I appreciate your honesty, but why didn't you tell me all this before? Didn't you trust me?" "Of course I trust you, Sarah," Jake replied, his voice laden with emotion. "I was afraid of losing you if you knew that part of my past. You're the best thing that's happened to me in my life, and the idea that you might see me differently, it terrified me." Sarah felt her heart soften at Jake's vulnerability. "Oh, Jake, we all make mistakes. What's important is how we choose to live after them." They hugged, the relief of shared truth flowing between them. But Sarah knew there was still one issue to address. "Jake," she said softly, pulling away a bit to look him in the eyes. "About Michael." Jake visibly tensed. "What about him?" "There's nothing between us," Sarah stated firmly. "It's true that he has a special place in my heart. We shared a lot of time together. But what you saw on the terrace, it was a moment of vulnerability. I was confused and hurt, and Michael was there as a friend." Jake nodded slowly, processing her words. "I understand, but I can't help feeling jealous, Sarah. The way he looked at you." "I know," Sarah said, gently caressing his cheek. "But you have to trust me, Jake. I chose you. I love you." As they looked into each other's eyes, they both felt that something had changed. The exposed truths, although painful, had strengthened their bond. However, their moment of reconciliation was interrupted by an urgent knock on the door. Upon opening it, they found Ryan, Jake's cousin, with a grave expression of concern on his face. "Jake, Sarah, you have to come with me now," he said hurriedly. "It's Olivia. She's in trouble." Without time for questions, they followed Ryan to the hotel lobby, where they found Olivia surrounded by menacing-looking men. "Jake!" Olivia exclaimed upon seeing them, fear evident in her voice. "Help me, please. These men, they say I owe them money, but it's a misunderstanding." Jake stepped forward, his posture protective despite his complicated history with Olivia. "Gentlemen, what's the problem here?" One of the men, evidently the leader, turned to Jake. "This woman owes us a considerable sum. If she doesn't pay now, we'll have to take measures." Sarah observed the scene with a mixture of fear and determination. She knew that what was about to happen would define not only the future of her relationship with Jake, but also the kind of people they were. "Jake," she said quietly, taking his hand, "I know you want to help, but we have to do this the right way." Jake looked at her, gratitude evident in his eyes. He nodded and turned to the group. "Gentlemen, I understand the situation, but this won't be resolved with violence. I propose that we all calm down and look for a legal and peaceful solution." The following hours were intense. Jake, with the help of Ryan and the legitimate contacts he had cultivated in recent years, managed to negotiate an agreement. Olivia would have to return the money, but she would be given a reasonable deadline and legal protection as long as she fully cooperated with the authorities. As Olivia was escorted by the police to give her statement, she looked at Jake and Sarah with a mixture of gratitude and regret. "I'm sorry," she said softly, "for everything. You make a good couple." When the chaos finally dissipated and they found themselves alone again, Jake took Sarah's hands in his. "Thank you," he said fervently, "for standing by my side, for helping me do the right thing." Sarah smiled, feeling her heart swell with love and pride. "We're a team, remember, in good times and bad." They kissed, a kiss that tasted of fulfilled promises and bright futures. Days later, As they walked along the beach at sunset, Jake suddenly stopped. "Sarah," he said, his voice trembling slightly with emotion, "these last few days have made me realize something." "What's that?" she asked, intrigued. Jake knelt in the sand, pulling a small box from his pocket. "That I don't want to spend another day without you by my side. Sarah Johnson. Would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Sarah felt as if the world had stopped. Tears sprang from her eyes as a smile lit up her face. "Yes," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Yes, 1,000 times, yes." As Jake slid the ring onto her finger, Sarah knew this was just the beginning of their adventure together. They had faced storms, overcome obstacles, and come out stronger. And now, with the sun setting over the Las Vegas Strip, they were ready to write the next chapter of their love story. What they didn't know was that fate still had one last surprise in store for them, one that would test their love in a way they had never imagined. The months following Jake's proposal were a whirlwind of emotions and preparations. Sarah and Jake decided to celebrate their wedding in New York, a symbolic gesture that united their two worlds. The date was set for the following spring, giving enough time to organize the event of their dreams. As the preparations progressed, life in Las Vegas continued. The design agency they had founded together was flourishing, attracting important clients and gaining recognition in the competitive world of business. One afternoon, while Sarah was working on the design of her wedding dress, she received an unexpected call. "Sarah, it's Michael," said the familiar voice on the other end of the line. "Michael." "What a surprise," Sarah replied, a mixture of curiosity and concern in her voice. "Is everything okay?" "Yes, everything's fine," Michael assured. "In fact, I'm calling to give you some news. I'm getting married, Sarah." The news took Sarah by surprise. "You're getting married? Michael, that's wonderful. Who's the lucky woman?" "Her name is Emma. I met her shortly after returning from Las Vegas. She's different from anyone I've ever known before. She makes me happy, Sarah." Sarah felt a wave of genuine joy for her ex-partner. "I'm so happy for you, Michael. Really?" "Thank you," said Michael, and Sarah could hear the smile in his voice. "Actually, there's something else. I was wondering if you and Jake would like to come to the wedding. I know it's a lot to ask, considering everything." "We'd love to," Sarah replied without hesitation. "If Jake's okay with it, of course." That night, when Sarah told Jake about the invitation, she saw a shadow of doubt cross his face. "Are you sure you want to go?" Jake asked. "I don't want you to feel uncomfortable." Sarah took his hand, looking into his eyes. "I'm sure. Michael was an important part of my life, and I'm glad he's found happiness. Besides," she added with a smile, "it'll be good practice for our own wedding." Jake kissed her softly. "You're amazing, you know that. Every day I fall more in love with you." The weeks flew by, and soon Sarah and Jake found themselves back in New York for Michael's wedding. The ceremony was intimate and emotional, and Sarah was surprised to realize how much things had changed. Seeing Michael swearing eternal love to another woman didn't awaken even a hint of jealousy or nostalgia in her. Instead, she felt a deep gratitude for the path that had led her to Jake. During the reception, Michael approached them, his new wife Emma on his arm. "Sarah, Jake, thank you for coming," Michael said, his face radiant with happiness. "It means a lot to me." "We wouldn't have missed it," Sarah replied sincerely. "Emma, it's a pleasure to finally meet you." As the two couples chatted, Sarah couldn't help but notice how natural it all felt. There was no tension, no regrets, just four people sharing a moment of joy. Back in their hotel room that night, Jake hugged Sarah from behind as they looked at the New York lights through the window. "What are you thinking about?" he asked softly. Sarah turned in his arms to look at him. "About how lucky I am, about how every decision, every twist of fate has brought me here with you." Jake kissed her tenderly. "I'm the lucky one, my love." But fate still had one more surprise in store for them. The next morning, as they were preparing to return to Las Vegas, Sarah felt a sudden wave of nausea. At first, she attributed it to jet lag and the champagne from the wedding. But when the symptoms persisted in the following days, a suspicion began to form in her mind. A week after returning to Las Vegas, Sarah found herself sitting in the bathroom of their apartment, a pregnancy test in her trembling hands. The 2 minutes of waiting felt like an eternity. When she finally looked at the result, her heart skipped a beat. 2 lines. Positive. "Jake," she called, her voice trembling with emotion. "Can you come here for a moment?" Jake entered the bathroom, his face full of concern upon seeing Sarah's expression. "What's wrong, my love? Are you okay?" In response, Sarah showed him the test. Jake looked at it for a moment, his eyes widening as he understood. Are we... He stammered, unable to form a coherent sentence. Sarah nodded, tears springing from her eyes. "We're going to be parents, Jake." With a cry of joy, Jake lifted her in his arms, spinning in the small space of the bathroom. Their laughter and tears mingled in a symphony of pure happiness. The months that followed were a roller coaster of emotions and preparations. The wedding was moved up, transforming into an intimate ceremony on a Las Vegas beach, with Sarah wearing a beautiful dress that accentuated her growing belly. Lucy and Ryan flew in from New York for the occasion, bringing with them the warmth and love of family. Even Olivia, who had begun her own path of redemption, sent her congratulations from afar. And so, on an autumn afternoon, with the sun setting over the Las Vegas Strip, Sarah and Jake swore eternal love to each other, surrounded by their loved ones and with the promise of a new life growing between them. Months later, in a Las Vegas hospital room, Sarah held in her arms a little girl with green eyes and olive skin. Jake, being seated beside her, couldn't contain his tears of happiness. "She's perfect," he whispered, gently caressing his daughter's cheek. "What shall we name her?" Sarah looked at her baby, then at Jake and smiled. "What do you think about Olivia?" Jake looked at her surprised. "Are you sure?" Sarah nodded. "Olivia means peace in Latin. And besides, without everything that happened, without all the twists of fate, we wouldn't be here now. I think it's a good way to close the circle, to transform something that was difficult into something beautiful." Jake kissed Sarah's forehead, then his daughter's. "Olivia," he said softly, "our little piece." As they held their newborn daughter, Sarah and Jake reflected on the incredible journey that had brought them to this moment. From that first encounter at Lucy's wedding, through the challenges, the revelations, the moments of doubt and those of pure happiness, each step had led them to this perfect instant. The future stretched out before them, full of promises and new adventures. They knew that not everything would be easy, that there would still be obstacles to overcome. But they also knew that together, with love as their compass, they could face anything that fate had in store for them. And so, as the sun rose over Las Vegas, bathing the city in a golden light, a new family began their own chapter in this great story of love, redemption, and new beginnings. Sarah looked at Jake, then at their daughter, and knew with certainty that this wasn't the end of their story. It was just the beginning of a new and exciting adventure. As the weeks passed, Sarah and Jake settled into their new roles as parents. Their design agency continued to thrive, with both of them taking turns working from home to care for little Olivia. The balance wasn't always easy, but they faced each challenge together, their love growing stronger with each passing day. One sunny afternoon, as they were enjoying a picnic in a local park, Sarah received a call from Lucy. "Sarah, you'll never guess what happened." Lucy's excited voice came through the phone. "What is it, Lucy?" Sarah asked, intrigued by her cousin's enthusiasm. "Ryan and I are moving to Las Vegas. His company is opening a new office there, and they've offered him a fantastic position. We'll be neighbors again." Sarah's face lit up with joy. "Lucy, that's incredible news. When are you coming?" As Sarah shared the news with Jake, they both felt a sense of completion. Their chosen family was growing, and Las Vegas was truly becoming their home. Months flew by, and before they knew it, Olivia was celebrating her first birthday. The party was a joyous affair, with Lucy and Ryan now settled in Las Vegas joining in the celebration. Even Michael and Emma flew in from New York for the occasion, a testament to how far they had all come. As Sarah watched Jake swing Olivia in his arms, her laughter ringing out across their backyard, She felt a wave of contentment wash over her. This was the life she had always dreamed of, even if she hadn't known it until now. That night, after putting Olivia to bed, Sarah and Jake sat on their porch, looking out at the twinkling lights of the Las Vegas Strip in the distance. "Can you believe how much our lives have changed in just a couple of years?" Sarah mused, leaning her head on Jake's shoulder. Jake wrapped his arm around her, pulling her close. "It's been quite a journey, hasn't it? But I wouldn't change a single moment of it. Every twist and turn led us here, to this perfect life we've built together." Sarah nodded, then sat up suddenly, a mischievous glint in her eye. "Speaking of changes, how would you feel about another one?" Jake looked at her, curiosity written across his face. "What do you mean?" With a smile, Sarah took Jake's hand and placed it on her stomach. "I think Olivia might be getting a little brother or sister soon." Jake's eyes widened in surprise, then filled with tears of joy. He pulled Sarah into a passionate kiss, their laughter and happy tears mingling in the warm night air. As they sat there, holding each other close and dreaming of their expanding family, Sarah and Jake knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Their love story, born from an unexpected meeting and tempered by trials and tribulations, had blossomed into a beautiful life filled with love, laughter, and endless possibilities. The Las Vegas lights twinkled in the distance, a reminder of the city that had brought them together, and now served as the backdrop for their happily ever after. And as the stars shone brightly overhead, Sarah and Jake looked to the future with hope and excitement, ready for whatever new adventures awaited them. Their story was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning, with a growing family, a successful business, and a love that continued to deepen with each passing day. Sarah and Jake were living proof that sometimes the greatest love stories are the ones we least expect. As they headed inside, hand in hand, they knew that whatever twists and turns life might have in store, they would navigate them together. For in each other, they had found not just a partner but a true soulmate. And in Las Vegas, a city known for its glitz and glamour, they had found something far more precious, a place to call home. The desert winds whispered secrets of the future, promising more joy, more challenges, and more love. And Sarah and Jake were ready for it all, their hearts beating as one, their love a beacon in the neon-lit night of Las Vegas.